Hi, I'm Lavana. At my promotion party, the one night that was supposed to be mine, my sister looked me dead in the eye, stopped me from pouring a glass of wine, and said, "You're not allowed to drink." Everyone laughed, but they didn't know she was sleeping with my husband, that she was stealing from me, that the pregnancy she bragged about wasn't a miracle, it was a weapon. They didn't see the emails, the rumors, the fake accusations that nearly cost me my job. They just saw the fun sister. At my promotion party, my sister stopped me pouring wine and said, "You're not allowed to drink." The rooftop was glowing with that perfect kind of spring dusk, warm air, soft breeze, and string lights that made everything feel like a scene out of a romantic movie. For once, it felt like the spotlight was on me. I had worked 12 years at that company, climbed from admin assistant to HR director, and tonight was the first time I let people celebrate me. Not the team, not the company. Me. People clinked glasses and laughed. My boss gave a short toast. My assistant brought out cupcakes with edible glitter. Dorian stood beside me with his arm around my waist, sipping from his wine, smiling at the right times. I told myself that was enough. I reached for the bottle of wine, something French I couldn't pronounce, and tilted it toward my glass. That's when Serafina said it, loud enough for every single conversation to die out around us. "You're not allowed to drink." At first, I thought she was joking, some weird overprotective sister thing, but she was standing there, tall, flawless, wearing a smug expression and that designer jumpsuit she never stops mentioning she didn't pay full price for. People laughed awkwardly. I looked around, still holding the bottle mid-air, my mouth slightly open. She smiled wider. "I mean, maybe Lavana's not telling us something?" She turned to Dorian. "You know, if she's planning to have a baby, this wouldn't exactly be the best time to start drinking." There it was. The air shifted. Someone chuckled nervously. Someone else murmured, "Oh, wow!" I placed the wine bottle back on the table, calmly, like my hand wasn't starting to shake, like my face wasn't hot with a rage I hadn't felt since we were kids. I looked at Dorian. He shrugged. "I shit you not." He shrugged. And that's when something inside me cracked a little. I smiled too. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. Because Serafina always finds a way to do this, to cut me down without making it look like she's cutting me down. I smiled and nodded like a good hostess, like a good wife, like a good sister. The rest of the party is a blur. I smiled at people. I hugged coworkers. I cut the damn cupcakes. But inside, my stomach twisted. My mind wouldn't stop spinning that moment in a loop. Later that night, I sat on the couch next to Dorian while he scrolled through his phone. I brought up the thing we hadn't talked about in months. "So, have you thought any more about starting a family?" I asked, trying to keep it light. He didn't look up. "Babe, I told you, I'm not in the headspace for that right now. There's too much going on." "Right, too much going on." He kept scrolling. I turned to him. "You know, the way Serafina brought it up tonight felt intentional." He sighed. "That's just how she is. You know that. God, if I had $1 for every time someone excused someone's bullshit with, 'That's just how they are,' I'd be on a yacht somewhere far away from this conversation." "She's my sister, Dorian," I said. "Not yours." He looked at me finally. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." I stood up. "Never mind." I got ready for bed in silence. And as I laid there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in slow circles, something deeper than anger settled into my chest. It wasn't just tonight. It was 100 nights before it, 1,000 slights, 1,000,000 dismissals I'd swallowed like bad medicine. All those times I let her interrupt me, undermine me, make everything about her. And now, this? She made my promotion party, my one night, about a pregnancy that didn't even exist. She weaponized my silence. And Dorian, he didn't protect me. He didn't even blink. Maybe Serafina always knew how he felt. Maybe I was the only one still pretending I didn't. But the photo I saw on his phone the next morning, that changed everything. I hadn't meant to snoop, I wasn't that kind of wife. But when Dorian left his phone face up on the nightstand and jumped in the shower, the screen lit up, and instinct took over. A message previewed itself like it was meant for me to see. Serafina. Too much. I swiped before I could think. There she was, draped in a silk robe, hair damp, the kind of smirk that wasn't meant for a sibling's husband. The bathroom steam still lingered in the air, and the caption felt like a whisper straight into my spine. My hands turned cold. I didn't breathe. I locked the phone and set it back down, careful to place it exactly where it was. I walked into the kitchen and turned on the coffee machine with the calm of someone walking toward a storm, not away from it. I said nothing when he stepped out of the shower. He kissed my cheek. I didn't lean in. He made small talk. I nodded. My mind was already somewhere else, backtracking, connecting dots, seeing old moments under new light. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. 2 days later, while Dorian was out running errands, I opened our joint bank account on my laptop. I wasn't even looking for anything specific, just following a thread I couldn't ignore anymore. And there it was, month after month, like clockwork, $1,200 transferred to Serafina. Notes like helping out, for her move, family support. For 6 months. He never mentioned it, not once. When Dorian walked in and saw me staring at the laptop, he paused mid-step. Everything okay? I smiled. Yeah, just checking our expenses. He came up behind me, glanced at the screen, then casually reached for the remote and changed the subject. You want to order Thai tonight? I nodded. Inside, a wall came down. This wasn't a bad moment or a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. He wasn't just lying, he was comfortable lying. And she? She was counting on me never noticing. That night, I sat at the dining table after Dorian fell asleep. I opened a blank document. I started typing dates, transaction IDs, notes. Not for him, for me. To remind myself I wasn't imagining this. My mind reeled back through every moment I'd brushed off before. The way Serafina announced her engagement at my wedding reception. 4 months later, the engagement was off. The time she posted a photo of herself wearing the exact same outfit I'd worn the week before, tagging it #StyleInspo. How she volunteered to help with our anniversary party, only to turn it into a networking event for herself. And now she was inserting herself into my marriage, into my future, into my life, like I was just another stage she could steal. The memory of Dorian's shrug at the party replayed in my head, like a line from a bad play. That's just how she is. How many times had I accepted that excuse? How many times had I let people tell me I was too sensitive, too serious, too dramatic? Maybe I wasn't overreacting. Maybe I'd just been conditioned to underreact. Because the truth was, this wasn't new, it was calculated. She knew how Dorian felt about starting a family. Of course she did. That comment at the party wasn't random. It was timed, precise, like every move Serafina made. And Dorian, well, his silence was starting to sound a lot like permission. But if I was going to survive this, I needed more than gut feelings and assumptions. I needed proof. I needed the whole truth, not his version, not hers. The truth I could hold in my hands. And then Noelle found the flight ticket. That's when I stopped second-guessing myself. She came by that Saturday with a box of books she thought I'd want. We were sitting at the kitchen island, drinking coffee that had gone cold, when she mentioned finding something odd while cleaning out the spare room. It was tucked inside one of the old cookbooks, she said, casually pulling out a folded paper. Guess who took a little trip to New York last fall? I unfolded it slowly. My eyes scanned the details. Dorian W. Ellis, one way, Austin to JFK. Departed 4 months ago. Return flight, none listed. I froze. Serafina had posted that same weekend on Instagram, her at a boutique hotel in Manhattan, claiming she was on a self-care solo retreat. There was a bathtub shot, a fluffy robe, room service for one. Noelle watched my face. You didn't know, did you? I shook my head. I couldn't even speak. I looked at the ticket again, like it might explain itself. But the dates, the timing, they said enough. This wasn't just some recent entanglement. They had a timeline, a setup, a secret routine. It wasn't an affair. It was an arrangement. I felt the world tilt slightly, not like falling, like waking up and realizing you've been standing in the wrong house, calling it home. Later that week, I visited Margot, Dorian's mother. I told myself it was for closure, for grounding. Maybe a part of me hoped she'd see what was happening and say, "We've got your back." But the air in her living room was cold before I ever sat down. Her smile was thin, forced. She poured tea like we were at a garden club. Then, out of nowhere, she said it. "You know, I just think it's strange you never told Dorian about the abortion." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She tilted her head, almost like she was confused by my reaction. "Well, that's what Serafina told us, that you terminated a pregnancy years ago and never said anything. She thought Dorian deserved to know." My skin went numb. That wasn't gossip. That wasn't tea. That was a wound. A private, painful decision from a life before Dorian, before I even met him. And now it was being passed around his family like a fun fact at brunch. I stood up. My chair barely made a sound, but everything in the room shifted. "I think I should go," I said calmly. "Levana," Margot began, but I didn't let her finish. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the car. I drove home in silence, my fingers wrapped so tight around the steering wheel that my knuckles faded to white. That night, I opened my laptop. Again. I started a folder. I named it Timeline. I gathered everything, screenshots of bank transfers, the photo from Serafina, the boarding pass, the clipped quote from Margot. I began noting dates, tracking conversations, saving links. Each piece wasn't enough on its own, but together they painted something I couldn't unsee. This wasn't petty. This wasn't family drama. This was coordinated, calculated. She didn't just want Dorian. She wanted my credibility, my peace, my voice. I remembered her toast at our wedding. "Here's to Levana, the calm one, the steady one, the one who always keeps it together." It used to sound like a compliment. Now I could hear the bite underneath. She'd been framing me from the beginning. Every comment, every gesture, every time she called herself the fun sister. She didn't want to be my sister. She wanted to be me. But I wasn't going to keep playing her game in silence. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This was a campaign. Then came the dinner. The night Serafina announced it. The baby. It was supposed to be a regular Sunday dinner at Thatcher and Margot's house. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a glass of wine or two. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just family. I wore a navy dress and brought a bottle of wine, even though I didn't feel much like drinking. I hadn't seen Dorian all day. He said he had errands. He looked tired when he arrived, like he'd just run a marathon in his mind. He kissed my cheek like a stranger and sat across the table. The food was warm. The conversation was dull, safe, until it wasn't. Serafina tapped her spoon against her glass. That sharp little clink. I remember it echoing louder than it should have. "I just want to say something," she said, standing with a glowing smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's been an emotional few months, and I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. But I'm pregnant." The room froze. Thatcher put his fork down slowly. Noelle blinked, confused. Margot gasped, one hand to her chest. And then Serafina looked right at me, straight through me, like I was made of glass. "And Dorian is the father." I didn't move. Someone let out a sound, maybe a laugh, maybe a cough. Then all the air seemed to get sucked from the room. My hands were resting in my lap. I felt them go completely still. My breath stayed locked somewhere beneath my ribs. I heard cutlery hit plates. A glass tipped over. Margot whispered something I couldn't make out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. Because in that moment, my body did what it always did when the ground dropped beneath it. It shut down. And Dorian? He didn't deny it. Not a single word. Not a protest. Not a correction. He just sat there, looking away. Thatcher pushed back his chair with a loud scrape and left the table. No one followed him. Margot's lips trembled. "Dorian! Please tell me this isn't true." Dorian stared at his plate. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." I didn't look at him. Noelle reached under the table, gently squeezed my hand. I don't know if she was trying to ground me or stop me from doing something reckless. Either way, it didn't matter. I couldn't feel my hand anyway. My mind detached. Everything around me slowed, like someone had taken a remote control and hit pause in the middle of chaos. In front of everyone, my in-laws, my sister, my husband, they shattered whatever was left of my dignity. She didn't just take Dorian, she took my voice. I stood quietly, walked out of the room without a word. No one followed. Maybe they didn't know how. Maybe they were frozen too. I got in my car and just sat there, hands on the wheel, not driving, not crying, just breathing. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be anywhere familiar. So I drove. Aimlessly, no destination, just motion. I passed the bakery where we bought our wedding cake, the bookstore where I found the card Dorian wrote me on our first anniversary. All of it felt like props from someone else's life. I pulled over near the lake and stared at the water for what could have been minutes or hours. And in the stillness, something inside me began to shift. I whispered aloud, "I've spent years being quiet." Then I looked down at my phone, scrolled to a number I hadn't used in a while. "Jolene." I pressed call. When she answered, I didn't ask how she was. I didn't ask about her kids or her new job. I only said one thing. "Tell me what she did to you," I said. "Start from the beginning." Jolene didn't hesitate. We met at a little coffee shop tucked into the corner of a quiet street, the kind with chipped mugs and jazz playing low over the speakers. She looked tired, not the kind of tired from work or kids, but the kind that lives in your bones when you've carried too much for too long. Reimbursement. Next thing I knew, I was on probation. My stomach turned. She told HR I was having an emotional breakdown and accused me of threatening a coworker. I didn't even know about the complaint until they called me in. I didn't interrupt. I let her keep going. She did the same thing to another girl who started dating her ex, spread rumors, nasty stuff, said she was sleeping with a manager to get promoted. The girl ended up transferring departments just to escape the whispers. Jolene looked up at me, eyes sharp and sad. "She doesn't just want to win, Lavana. She wants to erase people, make them irrelevant. That's what she's doing to you." I nodded slowly. It fit too well. The timeline, the tactics, the way Serafina smiled while twisting the knife. And just like clockwork, the next hit landed. This time at work. My manager, Natalie, called me into her office 2 days later. She looked uncomfortable, like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Someone submitted a formal complaint," she said, sliding a folder across the desk. "About your conduct with junior staff." My hands were steady, but my pulse ticked louder in my ears as I opened the file. Printed emails, long ones, accusing me of being harsh, belittling, entitled. There were references to team meetings, private conversations, some real, most not. The wording was sharp, calculated, but it wasn't mine. Not the tone, not the rhythm, not the way I write. And buried in the language? Little Serafina-isms, phrases she used too often, words she once teased me for not knowing. Natalie said, "We're required to look into it, but I wanted to give you a heads up first." I nodded. "Thank you." I left the office with the folder under my arm and my jaw tight enough to ache. That walk back to my desk felt longer than it should have. Like I was dragging the weight of everything I hadn't said. I sat down, opened my inbox, and quietly started forwarding emails to my personal account. She wanted my marriage. She wanted my family. Now she wanted my career. Number not this. That evening, I went to Serafina's apartment. She opened the door, wearing a cashmere cardigan and that same polished grin she always put on when she was ready to charm the devil. "Well, if it isn't the family favorite," she said sweetly, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" I walked in without being invited. She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you're in a mood." I turned to face her. "You've done this to other people, Serafina. I know. I spoke to Jolene." Her smile didn't flinch, but her eyes sharpened. "You've spread rumors, planted lies, sabotaged jobs. It's not even about Dorian, is it? It's about control." She laughed lightly. "Poor Lavana, still pretending you matter." I stepped closer, calm, measured. "Keep pushing. You'll find out just how much I matter." She tilted her head, the corners of her mouth twitching. I didn't wait for her to respond. I walked out with more certainty than I had felt in weeks. She wouldn't stop unless someone stopped her. That week, the email landed in HR's inbox, and it was nuclear. I was in the middle of prepping for a one-on-one with a new hire when Natalie, my department head, knocked on the door and asked if we could talk privately. Her expression was clipped, tight around the jawline. She handed me a sealed envelope and didn't sit down. "There's been a formal complaint," she said, eyes flicking away. "Multiple, actually." Inside was a printed packet, at least 10 pages thick. Anonymous allegations, claims of emotional intimidation, retaliation, and favoritism. Accusations that I had bullied younger team members, manipulated promotion reviews, and abused my position. Each claim more absurd than the last, and disturbingly detailed. Someone had forged entire email chains, even included fake screenshots of messages I'd supposedly sent, dripping with hostility and arrogance. The voice in those emails wasn't mine, but it was close enough to raise doubt. "She's trying to make them believe I'm a monster," I whispered. Natalie folded her arms. "Until we finish a review, you'll need to take a leave of absence." It felt like the ground tilted. But I didn't argue. I nodded, gathered my things. As I walked out, heads turned. A few coworkers avoided eye contact. One offered a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. By the time I got to the parking lot, the silence felt louder than anything Serafina had ever said. She wasn't just trying to ruin me, she was trying to replace me. And the worst part? If I didn't do something now, she just might succeed. 3 nights later, Thatcher called. He said he wanted to host a family dinner, a peace offering, to ease tensions. His voice was measured, careful, like he was testing the temperature before stepping into water. I said yes. Not because I believed him, but because I needed the table set. When I arrived, I brought a folder, a flash drive, and someone who had nothing left to lose. Jolene. Margot opened the door, and I could see Noelle in the background, nervously adjusting the placemats. Dorian was already seated, back straight, face unreadable. Serafina sat beside him, legs crossed, smiling like this was a reunion and not a reckoning. We skipped pleasantries. I asked to speak first. Then I opened the folder. Bank statements, weekly transfers from Dorian to Serafina, screenshots of messages, the plane ticket to New York, the emails she had sent in my name, planted, manipulative. And finally, the signed statement from Bryony, their former roommate, who'd once been burned by Serafina too. I slid it across the table to Thatcher. The room went quiet except for the sound of paper turning and breathing, becoming uneven. Dorian shifted in his seat. Serafina's fingers tensed on her wine glass. Thatcher looked up after 5 minutes that felt like 5 years. "You two disgust me," he said. Serafina's smile twitched, then disappeared. Dorian dropped his gaze. Margot's lip quivered. Noelle pulled out her phone, gently tapping it to start recording. Serafina noticed, and her mask cracked for the first time. "You're all just jealous," she said, standing abruptly. "You always have been. I was always better than her, more fun, more likable. Don't pretend otherwise." Thatcher didn't flinch. "You're nothing now." And for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. But Serafina wasn't finished. She was just getting started. Within days of the family dinner, the fallout reached my workplace again. But this time, from a very different direction. My attorney sent HR a detailed response, complete with a digital forensics report. The IT specialist had traced the IP addresses used to send the fake emails. Every one of them pointed back to a device previously logged into our home network, one I hadn't used in over a year, one that Serafina borrowed when hers died last fall. I watched Natalie read through the report in silence. This time, her voice was steady when she said, "We're reversing the administrative leave for now." The tide was finally shifting. HR didn't apologize directly, but their tone softened. I could tell they knew. And Serafina? She panicked. She started calling people, old coworkers, distant family, even mutual friends, trying to clear the air. Her version of damage control sounded something like this. People love to twist things when they're jealous. She's always been sensitive, you know? I didn't mean for any of this to go so far. Then came the vague Instagram post, a selfie with dim lighting and the caption, "Sometimes the ones who smile the biggest are hiding the deepest scars. Be kind." She wasn't subtle. She never had been. But she was desperate. And that's when she became reckless. That Friday, my personal laptop started glitching. I thought it was nothing. A restart, maybe a quick virus scan. But then a friend texted me a link, a burner blog, anonymous, half-baked, full of vague accusations and out-of-context images. And right there, in between broken grammar and dramatic headlines, were private photos. Photos from my phone. Photos no one had access to but me. Moments of me laughing with friends, screenshots of messages from years ago, spliced together to look like I was hiding something. Then came the texts, sent to my boss, a coworker, even Noelle. "Did you know Lavana was seeing someone behind her husband's back? Not surprised. She's always had a reputation. Check her old job history, ask why she really left." It was frantic, sloppy. But it worked, just enough to stir doubt. Noelle called me. Her voice was tight. "She's spiraling," she said, "and she wants you to spiral too." I sat at my desk, staring at the chaos, and I felt it, righteous fury. Not because she was winning, but because she thought I would crumble now, after everything. So I did the one thing she never expected. I went public. I recorded a video, calm, composed. Just me, sitting on my couch, speaking directly into the lens. I've worked in HR for over a decade. I've helped employees through burnout, grief, workplace bullying. I never thought I'd face all three in my own life, at the same time, and from people I once called family. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I ended with this. Silence isn't grace, and survival isn't weakness. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when your voice shakes. I uploaded it to LinkedIn and closed the app. By the next morning, it had nearly 200,000 views. Messages flooded in. From strangers, from former coworkers, even from HR, offering quiet support behind the scenes. Thatcher texted me later that night. "You didn't just survive this, you led through it." And then, right on cue, Dorian showed up at my door with flowers and regret. He stood on the porch like he belonged there, like the last 6 months hadn't happened. The bouquet was his usual choice, lilies, my mother's favorite, not mine. A detail that used to make me smile. Now, it just told me how little he really knew me. "I messed up," he said, voice tight. "I was confused. She got in my head. I didn't know what I was doing." I didn't respond. "She's toxic, Lavana. You know that. She twisted things. I see it now." I let him speak. Let him circle his guilt like a man drowning in the shallow end. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered. "I was just lost." I tilted my head, not out of sympathy, but to really look at him. For the first time in a long while, I saw the boy he still was, not the man he never became. "No one forced you, Dorian," I said evenly. "No one made you lie, or cheat, or stay silent while she humiliated me in front of our family." His eyes welled, but I stayed dry. I had cried all my tears long before this moment. "You didn't just choose her," I said. "You erased me." He reached for my hand, and I stepped back. Then I handed him the manila envelope. Inside, divorce papers, signed, dated, clean. He looked down at them like they'd burned him. "I won't fight you," he murmured. "You already did," I said. "You just lost before you realized it." I closed the door before he could say anything else. Across town, Serafina's world was folding in on itself. Thatcher cut all contact. Margot changed the locks and blocked her number. Noelle had quietly sent Bryony's written statement to the HR department that had once placed me on leave. Then came Jolene's affidavit. Legal action moved quickly. Her lawyer served Serafina at her gym. Ironic, considering it was the one place she always claimed to be centered. She tried to deny everything, of course. But the evidence was relentless. Screenshots, statements, IP logs, transactions. Her carefully curated image cracked. She was dropped from a panel she was scheduled to host. 2 of her PR clients pulled out. A whispered pause became a quiet blacklisting. She tried to disappear, to reset in another city. But reputation follows you when the wreckage is this big. And me? I didn't post about it. I didn't dance on her ashes. I simply exhaled. Because justice doesn't always wear a robe or slam a gavel. Sometimes it's just the truth, out in the open. I went back to the office once, quietly, to collect what was mine. My nameplate, my files. The cactus I kept on the windowsill. It didn't hurt, not anymore. The walls felt smaller than I remembered. My desk, less like a foundation, more like a weight I was ready to shed. I drove home, walked through the house one final time. Every photo, every pillow, every detail held something I no longer wanted to carry. That night, Noelle and Thatcher took me to dinner. They toasted me, not for surviving, but for standing tall through the storm. And as I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever, my phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Seattle wants to meet. Opportunity looks solid. Interested?" I stared at the screen. So I booked the flight. One way. From the window seat, I watched Austin grow smaller beneath the clouds, the skyline thinning into memory. There were no texts left to answer, no glances backward. I hadn't told Dorian I was leaving. I didn't owe him that. And Serafina? Her silence was the only gift I'd ever needed. I remembered the first time I landed in Austin all those years ago. Young, optimistic, a little naive. I had believed in beginnings, in people, in love that stayed true. But I was leaving that city not as someone broken, just someone who'd grown out of what no longer fit. The plane drifted through a patch of sunlit clouds. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to savor the peace. For the first time in a long time, my body wasn't bracing for the next blow. Seattle greeted me with gray skies and clean air. My new apartment was modest, tucked above a flower shop, the scent of eucalyptus and lavender seeping through the floorboards. It was quiet, blessedly quiet. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, as if giving each item permission to start over. I found a therapist. Started jogging again. Every Sunday, I volunteered at a local nonprofit where no one knew my past. They just saw me. The HR director from my old company reached out about a consulting position, remote, flexible, familiar. I thanked her and declined. "I'm building something different now," I typed. And I meant it. One evening, I sat by the window with a pen in my hand and paper I hadn't touched since college. I wrote a letter I would never send. "Dear Serafina, you didn't win. You lost someone who could have been your sister." I paused, then kept going. "You didn't just betray blood. You wasted it. You burned every bridge thinking you'd never need to return. But I'll still be standing long after the smoke clears." I folded the letter and placed it in a box marked "Done." I slid it to the back of the closet. Some wounds never really close. but I'd stopped trying to stitch them shut. I was learning to live with the scar and not hate it for being there. One morning, I wandered into a neighborhood bookstore. The barista remembered my name after one visit. I sat by the window with a cup of herbal tea, watching rain streak down the glass. A little girl at the next table let out a sudden laugh. Pure, full, bright. I smiled. No Dorian, no Serafina, no shadows waiting behind the door. Just me. And that was enough. This isn't revenge. This is resurrection. Sometimes it's not the betrayal that breaks you. It's the silence you kept before it. For a long time, I thought staying quiet was strength. I believed being the stable one meant absorbing hurt, letting things slide, keeping the peace no matter the cost. But peace built on denial? It always collapses. Eventually, it buries you. I've learned something the hard way. Your voice is not a luxury, it's a right. And when people try to steal it, that's when you use it the loudest. If you've ever been lied to, dismissed, made to feel invisible by someone you trusted, I want you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not alone. Healing doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just walking away, choosing peace over explanation, signing the paper, booking the flight, telling the truth, even when it shakes your voice. That's what resurrection really is. And now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought would always be in your life? How did you rebuild after that? Or maybe you're still in it, still figuring it out. That's okay too. This space is for you. If this story touched you in any way, drop a 1 in the comments, or just share where you're watching from. If you didn't like it, I'm still grateful you stayed. Let me know why. I read everything, and hey, if you want more stories that go deep, that heal, that hold a mirror up to real life, hit subscribe and join us for the next chapter. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You're doing better than you think.